Yeah.
It's great to someone who's been doing it for decades.
Yeah.
That it's like you just keep going, you just keep going, you just keep going, and then boom.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 26 years. I almost kind of lost hope that whatever was going to happen, or I was going to get a following, or people were going to really start following me in masses, whatever even happened. It's funny, my fiance and I, now that all this stuff is blowing up on the internet, we can't go through the airport without somebody coming up and wanting to take a picture. I thought this would never happen, and now it's happening. And hot breath.
What's goody, Hot Breathiverse? Welcome back to Hot Breath, the show where you learn comedy from the pros. I am your host, comedian Joel Byers, and our guest today is the first comic to ever get a standing ovation on Jimmy Fallon, where, fun fact, a week prior to his appearance, his agent had dropped him.
Yes.
This is just one of the many examples of adversity he's had to overcome in his 25-plus year career, that it was all self-made all the way through, producing his own online content while the industry was shutting him. He was out there still creating his own opportunities. What all started when he moved from Wisconsin to New York City, where today he's known for his fun and playful persona, but back then he was actually trying to emulate more edgy comics like Patrice O'Neill. So now, most recently, he has blown up on social media, now selling out venues across the country, and he's here today to tell us how it all went down. So, hot brethren and sister, and welcome to the Hot Breathiverse, Mr. Pete Lee.
Hey, I got some hot breath I'm bringing in here.
Let's go.
This is great. Yeah, it's funny that you bring up Patrice. I ran into him at the Montreal Festival when I did it. And Robert Kelly was giving me grief about because Patrice was just notoriously roasty with people, and if he liked you, he would make fun of you, and the more he made fun of you, the more he actually saw potential in you. And I mean, there were comics that Patrice would crack down at the cellar, and I always heard those stories, but I was never one of them. So of course I just I walk up to Patrice after my set at Montreal, and I was doing New Faces, and I could see him in the back of the room because he was a giant man. And I could just see one of my heroes, just the silhouette of him as I'm killing, it was first of all, I didn't plan on killing, and then it happened. And then I see Patrice. So I go up to him afterwards, and I'm like, Patrice, I'm a big fan. Can I take a picture? And I had one of those digital cameras, before everything was on your cell phone. And so I had to boot it up, and it was a Sony, and it made this noise. It was like, and then the lens went, and I was like, oh God, Patrice is going to kill me for this. He's just going to destroy me. And then I'm like, I'm so sorry, man. I was like, you must hate me. And Robert Kelly was standing right there, and Robert goes, yeah, of course he hates you, stupid. He's like, he hates all this. And Patrice goes, no. He goes, yes, I said. He goes, I want to take a picture with him. And Robert goes, if he's being nice to you, that means he really hates you. And Patrice goes, no, I like this dude. He goes, he knows exactly what's wrong with him. He goes, I don't need to tell him. I just saw his set. He goes, he knows that he's painfully nice and it's stupid. And I remember in that moment thinking I didn't even completely understand my comedic persona. And then Patrice just told me, in that moment. And then we took this picture, and then he got in the van and drove away. And, maybe once he got in the van, he was like, oh yeah, I really hated that guy or something like that. But to me, he said that he liked me. And I was like, oh man, that's the biggest compliment ever.
And what year was that?
I was 2005.
Oh,
isn't that crazy?
Is that the same year you moved to New York?
Yeah, that was the same year I moved to New York. Gosh. And so I moved to New York, just the best series of events happened. I moved to New York. Hold on. Sorry.
Great, yeah. Just COVID, everything.
Yeah, it's just COVID. I was doing a joke on stage for a little while where I said, I go, don't worry. My doctor told me I can't get COVID because I already have it. But no, I just had I had a total post-nasal drip kind of a thing. And then I was like, oh shit, how do I finish this sentence with this?
You're doing great.
But yeah, I moved to New York. I got on the soap opera As the World Turns. I got Comedy Central's Premium Blend. That's what led into New York. And then I got on Last Comic Standing, and I got Montreal. And it was a big year. But that was back in the days where people gave you stuff, you got stuff, and then things happened. Now it's look at the studio that we're sitting in. This is a studio that is built by self-made people that went, I'm not going to wait for a network to give me something. I'm going to make my own network and buy these chairs and shit like that and these cool cameras and make stuff and put it out, and people are going to watch it. And I love this model way better than the I had a therapist that called it like the daddy son model. That was what the old model was. Like the network would like give you something like your dad, like, Dad, can I please have a bike? And your dad would be like, yes, you can have a bike. Now people are like, screw it, I'll make my own bike.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll get a paper route, I'll get money for my own bike, and then, you know, I'll trick it out and people will be impressed by it. That's like the new model of new media. And that's one of the reasons why I love the Comics That Kill page so hard, is like, you guys just made that. And you went out and reached out to comics and were like, do you want to collaborate? Like, I remember when you guys reached out to me, I was so excited about that. I was like,
wow.
Yeah. And then like, I got like tens of thousands of followers off of the posts that we did together.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It was awesome.
Well, I love comics working together and like comics helping comics. You know, that's the new wave, I feel like.
That's what you need to do. I mean, it was said to me a long time ago. We were talking about Andrew Schultz. Andrew Schultz was like, we are the network. And like, he's always been like, when you sit down and you have dinner with him, he's always been a little bit of like a guy where you're like, am I talking to Tony Robbins right now? Because like, he's like always seeing the big picture. He's always like telling you the next thing. And he always says it with such passion that you're like, you should be wearing one of those microphones that curls around your head, dude. You know, like Tony Robbins. But yeah, he was like, we are the network. And I remember thinking like, no, at that time I was like, the network is the network, because I still wanted to get like chosen by the network at that time. And he was saying like, no, you got to make your own shit. You got to do this. And so I started dabbling and like editing more and shooting my sets and like putting up a set here and there. But I wish I would have followed his advice way earlier and like got on that train way earlier and like started putting stuff up, because now, you know, I put out a video every day now, and like before I was putting up like 3 videos a month and being like, man, why aren't they getting more traction? But like, if you become a network that people can, like, imagine that people turned on, to use the network approach, like imagine people turn on CBS and like sometimes something was on and sometimes nothing was on, you know, like that was what my Instagram and TikTok was before. And now it's like every day there's something, you know, there's like always a stand-up clip. And then usually I reserve like stories and that kind of stuff for like photos and like what's going on in my life kind of a stuff. Like, hey, if you want to see a little bit more, you can see this. Do you ever go live, by the way? I don't.
Sometimes. I've been doing a little bit more, and I've been doing live interviews more, but I'm not very consistent with it. Yeah. Consistency seems to be the name of the game.
Yeah. I don't know. Every time I go live, it's like when I'm drunk and it's 4 a.m. and
it's a good time to do it.
Yeah. And like I was out in Spain and we were at this wedding, and I was just like up because of the time change, and I was super bored. And then I went to sleep and I woke up and my fiance was checking her phone and she goes, did you go live like right before you went to bed? And I was like, oh yeah, I went on the balcony and I didn't have anybody to talk to, so I just went live.
Oh my.
And she was like, all right, it looks like you didn't say anything embarrassing, but she's like, apparently like all my friends and family were watching you. And I'm like, oh damn, all right. I don't know what I was saying, but that's like almost the only time that I like when I'm sober, or like it's a day like this, like I never want to go live. Yeah. But like when I'm hammered, I'm like, we should go live.
But that's the thing about the content hustles. It's like always feeling like you've got to do something. I've got to be hosting. I've got to be creating something. Like there's that internal pressure on us, especially as comedians, of like, well, I got to get something.
Yeah, I got to get something out. And the thing that's encouraging to that is every once in a while you put that thing out that you weren't even going to put out, and then it crushes. Yeah. And it's also the thing where you were looking at it and you're like, this is stupid, I shouldn't post that. And like it just destroys. And I think that little moment is responsible for so much bad content on the internet. Like there's and that little moment, knowing that moment makes me forgiving every time I see a friend post something that's just like almost embarrassing or, you know, whatever. I'm like, you know, we're all just, nobody knows. We're all just trying to figure out the next thing, or we're trying to figure out the thing that we're like, oh, that's what I do online. Like we're all experimenting at this point. And I have a friend that has been posting all sorts of embarrassing content lately, but my friend's going through something, and so like I think that a lot when I see those posts. So I'm
What's
like,
been working for you? Like, what have you
oh,
found momentum with? What popped first, maybe, and what have you been doing to build on that?
well, I mean, stand-up clips, obviously.
Right.
It's so funny because I was trying everything. I was like, because there's so much pressure as a stand-up traditionally to like be a really good host. Which like I've hosted TV shows and stuff like that and read teleprompter and done all that kind of stuff. There's so many different types of comedic posts. There's the one person sketches where, like my buddy Fahim Anwar does those really great where
Yeah.
he plays both characters in the thing and he's so funny. Like there's the just popping over content or popping over something that's topical in like a green screen approach and like, roasting it or giving commentary to it. There's all sorts of things like that. There's also like just filming classical sketches with your friends, almost like, it's like a Lonely Island kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's music videos, like, oh, well, maybe nobody knows that I'm good at comedy music, whatever. I think that in my time on the internet since like MySpace, I've tried my hand in like a little bit of all of that. And I was always like thinking that one of those things was going to be the thing that hit. And then it turns out the thing that I'm good at, stand up, was the thing that people wanted to see me do. And it's so stupid, like that idea that, oh my God, people followed me on here because they like me because of my stand-up comedy. And then now that I post stand-up comedy clips, they want to see that. It was so simple, but it was so hard for me to drill into my mind that could be true.
What was it? Was it just like self-doubt that there's no way they would like me for my stand-up? It's got to be something else.
Yeah. Well, I think, I had this manager in New York that he was a really good manager. I won't name him or anything like that. I won't name him because I don't want to shame him.
Yeah.
But I remember when I first moved to New York, he's like, what do you want to do? Like we had that meeting. And he's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to do stand-up comedy. And he's like, yeah, but you're never going to make it if you just want to do that. He's like, stand-up is whatever, but like you got to want to act. Like you got to want to sell a show. You got to want to create sitcoms. And so like throughout my years in this business, like I've literally like, I've written for TV shows. I've produced TV shows. I've written spec scripts. I've done everything. I think I've mastered a lot of things that are not stand-up comedy. Before the pandemic, I was going down the road for my own sitcom with NBC, and then the pandemic happened and the plug got pulled. We were like just about to start casting people.
Oh, did you do that with Fallon? Did he
yeah.
help connect the dots? Because I know you guys hit it off and all that.
Yeah, and
Wow.
it was one of those things where it was like, wow, this is going to happen, and then COVID-19 happened, and then
It's like a sitcom. You're like the star. It's like a Peatly sitcom.
Peatly
around your
sitcom
life.
was going to be set in Wisconsin.
Oh my God.
It had like a good real feel to it. I was really excited about it. I had a showrunner, all that kind of stuff, and then so I feel like I got good at all that other stuff that managers and agents always told me, like, that's the stuff. If you want to be, if you want people to be able to see your stand up, you have to get good at all this other stuff. And I remember it always seemed counterintuitive, but I was like, okay. And like, I've taken acting classes. I've gone to like so many auditions. For a while. Like I quit touring on the road because I was like, I gotta land one of these auditions. Wow. So like I just saved up money and I would audition every single day, and I hated it. Like, I don't know if I really like acting, and I don't honestly know if I like auditioning sucks so bad. Maybe I think I don't like acting because auditioning is so bad, and that's the majority of the acting that I do. And then all of a sudden this like shift happened where, specials started to be big on Netflix, and then the industry realized that that you could pay a comedian like a fraction of what you'd pay a cast for a show. The production of a special is like, you shoot like 4 things of it, maybe 2. And so the production budget is just way cheaper than any other type of show. But then the views on these specials were insane. And then even if you pay a comic well for a special, it's still way less than you spend on a show.
Right.
And so all of a sudden the industry went, wait, maybe stand-up is its own thing. And then it's funny how that model became a thing, like, oh, well, now I want to get a Netflix special.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden the views on, Instagram, once like Reels started, and then, or IGTV kind of started it. And then
when everything went vertical, it seemed like there was a big sea change there.
big shift. Yeah. And then TikTok happened, and all of a sudden all the views started happening on that. And I just it felt like my dreams were coming true as the industry shifted.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I just get to do stand up.
Yeah.
Like, I love stand up, and I love writing. I love writing on the fly. I love writing a lot in volume as well. And like, I did a show on Comedy Central before the pandemic that kind of shut down the show called This Week at the Comedy Cellar. And every single week I'd write 20 minutes to a half an hour of new stand up.
Every week?
Every single week. Yeah.
What?
It was a weekly topical stand up show. So all the comedians, and it was really funny because the first week of the show, we all came in everybody kind of came in and they're like, if you have a bit about this or that, but like, here are the topics and whatever. And I was so used to writing for like Best Week Ever. And like I used to write for these shows on True TV where they'd give you like this packet that was insane. And I'd write like 200 jokes. So when we got the opportunity to write for This Week at the Comedy Cellar, I was like, what if I actually wrote stand-up like how I would have to write for one of these TV shows? What if I sat down and I spent like 30 hours writing for this? So I came in to the first episode and I had written like 25 minutes on this stuff. And I told one of the head producers, I was like, hey, I have a lot of stuff. I was like, can I just go until I don't have any stuff anymore? And he was like, yeah, I guess so. So I went up in the middle of the show. I did like almost a half an hour set, which I'd never done a half an hour at the Cellar prior to that. And I'm crushing, and I keep looking down at my set list, and I'm like, okay, this joke. And then maybe one would go well, maybe one would bomb, and I'd be like, that sucked. That's funny that we can all agree that how bad that sucked. And, but that show taught me, like, oh my God, I can write in bulk, And so when I decided to start posting every single day on social media, I actually did the math, and I was like, okay, remember how impressed we were when George Carlin would write an hour every year? Like, that's the thing that comedians still talk about, like George Carlin did a new hour every single year. And obviously to write a new hour every year, you have to probably write 2 hours and whittle it down to one. But I was like, if I'm going to post every day, that's anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute 30. So like, let's average a minute. I'm like, I have to write over 6 hours of material this year that's worth posting if I'm going to post every day. So I was like, all right, I gotta This Week at the Comedy Cellar this. Like, every single week I need to like write a lot of stuff. And so over the course of that year, I think I timed it out. I think I wrote almost 7 hours of stuff, but that included crowd work stuff. Mm-hmm. But I only included crowd work in it where I was like, oh, that turned into something, like I really did write something on stage. But I remember thinking like when all this became possible, that we could just focus on stand-up, I'm like, finally, I get to just like dedicate my resources and my brain power to just this, instead of having to do all this other bullshit that I don't want to do. I can actually just work hard at stand-up.
What does that work look like for writing that? You make it, every week I just wrote, 30 minutes of material. You make it sound so easy. What is it? Let's get into that. What is it?
Yeah.
What does that look like? How do you write so many jokes so fast?
Well, it was funny. A long time ago, and I'll get into the technicals of that, but like a long time ago, I was Louis C.K.'s opener. Like, and this was like back when he was still working comedy clubs. Like, and I went to him and I was like, I think I know what you're doing. And he's like, don't ever start a conversation with that. But I was like, I think I know what you're doing. I'm like, you're doing stand-up jokes and bits, in the traditional, setup, punchline, tag. I go, but you're also like kind of doing one-man sketches. And like, I was like, and I know that, you used to write for like the Dana Carvey show and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I know that you know sketch very well. And he's like, honestly, he goes, a lot of the stuff follows the format of like find a fun game, heighten, heighten, heighten. And then the last punchline of the bit is actually the first punchline of the next game of the next bit. And just kind of almost kind of like a one-man herald, like that you would learn if you went to study at the UCB. And I was like, how do I learn that? And he's like, well, you live in New York City. He's like, you should actually go and study at the UCB. So on his suggestion, I went and I took all the classes at the UCB, like all the improv, all the sketch. It's funny, the Daily Show's Jordan Klepper, who's just brilliant and amazing. He was my first improv teacher, and we still stay in touch. And he was such a good teacher at teaching like the fundamental element of like figuring out what a game is. And like the way that you figure out what a game is you just ask yourself the question, what is fun about this? Like, instead of like as stand-ups, we get in our head about like, how can I make this brilliant?
Yep.
Or like, how can I impress my friends who are comics in the back of the room? And that's not the way to get to the funniest thing ever. Like, you're actually going to get writer's block if you think that. Like, if you ask the question, like, how can I find the fun? What's fun here? You're going to come up with so much content, because I don't know, like, I'm trying to look around the room or think of something, or I'll give you an example. The Queen died, and I remember I was just like heading to my gig, and I'm like, all right, I got to write something about the Queen dying, because, number one, I really like the Queen. I'm odd, but so I wanted to write a joke that was funny about her dying, but not like super disrespectful or so disrespectful that it was funny, And so I started thinking, I'm like, what's fun about her dying? And then I just remember in my head, I go, the Queen died, and I go, fucking fentanyl, and that was that joke. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. And then I like, oh, you got another one, you know? And I took that on stage that night. And then another thing that Louis told me is like, just like, if you take something funny on stage, your mouth will save you with the rest. Like, your brain will save you. Like, don't overthink it, and like, don't overwrite a bit, because a lot of times you're funny, and trust that you're going to be funny, and like leap and the net will appear kind of a thing. And so I don't even know what the taglines on it was, but it wound up being, like 3 or 4 tags. And then boom, I put it on the internet and it blew up. And, but yeah, a lot of times that's what the writing process is I'm literally just thinking like, what's fun about this? And then I take a little nugget on stage, and then I let myself save myself. And then, I'm usually watching my footage like the night of or the next day, because I'll upload it and start to like clip it, or, cut the selects out of it. And if I have a new bit, I usually won't take the first version of it. I'm like, all right, I have from Thursday through Saturday to get this down to what I need it to be before I post it. And so I'll actually like work on the tags, like I'll go to a coffee shop, start to brainstorm, or I'll just keep playing with it on stage. And that's what the creative process looks like. Okay.
So when you're sitting down to write tags, I'd love to hear about on stage too, but off stage, let's just use the Queen example, even though you found your tags on stage. But is it like, okay, I have this fun idea, Queen, fentanyl. Do you just write that at the top? And then are you like, what are other funny ideas that connect to this? Or
Yeah. Like, well, I mean, it really turns out.
Give us your secrets, Pete.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it all depends on whether, like, because sometimes I'll find something really funny that's like a second beat of the thing where I can like heighten that thing. Sometimes I'll find one really funny tag, but I won't find a second one, and like a month later I'll find it. So like, it's not like I write things that are perfect instantly in a week. But I'm trying to think of an example of something that I've written lately. Okay, so I'll give you an example of something I wrote last weekend. So I went on my bachelor party, and I was like I'm not like a drug guy or anything like that. But I went on a bachelor party, and we partied. And I went on stage a week later last Friday, and I was just off. And I had one idea of one thing that I'd said to a friend when we were heading back from the bachelor party, and my friend was like, "Oh, that's funny. You should write that down." So I had one word that I wrote down, and so I was on stage, and I'm like, I was kind of bombing because I was just so uncomfortable in my own body, like nervous. And I was like, I'm so sorry, you guys, if I seem really off. I'm like, I went on my bachelor party last weekend, and I was like, and I was microdosing cocaine, and and just the idea of microdosing cocaine, which I really did, because like a little bit goes a long way with me. Like literally the tiniest amount. It's like I can go for like 6 hours, where my friends are like, what, how is that even possible? I guess I'm very sensitive to it. And then I did a couple sets that night. And by the third set, like in between, I'd written down some beats. I was like, well, what would be funny for a second beat? And then I was like, I found it on the second set. I was like, oh yeah, I microdosed an 8-ball, and I was like, it was just like a lot of tiny things, but I was like, it was medicinal, it was therapy, and and then I forgot the beat that I got to. Oh, then it went into another thing where I'm like, and I've just felt terrible all week, like really bad, and I was like, and I can't figure out if I feel really bad or if this is just how it feels to not be on cocaine. And like, I've felt this way my whole life. And so like that was, but all of those things, all of those beats were found by just me going, well, what's fun about this? And it all started out with me feeling terrible and going like, well, what's fun about that? And then I was like, well, maybe the truth that I tried this drug. I'm not good at it at all. It's like a cool guy drug. And I took the littlest amount of it, and I couldn't handle it at all. And then, so I just adapted that to whatever, the mushroom terminology is. And so many of my friends, they're like, yeah, I got off Zoloft, and now I'm just on mushrooms every single day. And I'm like, well, I'm on Zoloft. Like, you can just take the pharmaceutical and it's pretty great.
But that also fits your voice and your persona of like this nice guy, just like this fun, snuggly guy.
Yeah.
How did you, because I'm kind of in a transition right now in my stand-up. If it's like, I did like a self-produced comedy special, and I worked like 10 years to create this set. And now I'm like, but what's the next chapter? And I feel myself being like a silly goose on stage and like baby face and like that likability. But I'm trying to figure out, all right, well, what do I want to talk about? How do I kind of step into that voice that I feel is the direction, but I'm kind of like sputtering right now?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I feel like people's true comedy voices is super close to who they are when they're just hanging out, but like, and I'm somebody that I've gone through so many different iterations of my comedic voice. And so I'm talking about something that I'm guilty of, is that in the past, I've gotten so comfortable with this is how I deliver a joke that I couldn't just be closer to who I am while I said that, because I would worry that if I said the joke like how I would just say it, it wouldn't work because it works in the voice of this persona in a way. And it was interesting when I started doing more crowd work, and so many comedians have been too stuck up to do crowd work. They've been critical of crowd work. All right, I'm going to give a sidebar about crowd work.
Yeah.
I was talking to, and I'm not going to name the comedian, but I was talking to this comedian that we'll say that they're on a big TV show.
Is this in New York or LA?
This is in New York.
New York.
And
okay.
So I'm talking to this comedian, and this comedian was like trying to give me shit about being like a crowd work clip comedian,
Oh wow.
And this comic goes, yeah, well, it's like those comedians that do crowd work. Oh, sorry, Pete, you do crowd work. Sorry, I just think it's shitty. And I pulled up my Instagram and I go, do you see this number? I go, 10 million people watch my crowd work clips every single month.
Wow.
And I go, about 1.5 million people watch the shitty TV show that you're sort of on.
Oh man.
Because this person's not really on that TV show. Like it's just like a little tiny spot part. And everybody at the table, we were at the cellar table. Everybody at the table like went, oh, you know, because it was like I'm almost like embarrassed saying that I was that mean to somebody, but like it was uncharacteristically mean. But it also it really encompassed exactly how I feel about that. Like I don't feel like anybody in comedy should ever be like too good to do anything in comedy. You know, like like you go to open mics and you'll see that asshole open micer that's like, oh my God, like you just did a joke and then you did an act out. And I'm like, well, what if the act out is really funny? What if it helps? What if the crowd, what if it helps somebody in the crowd, like really take that humor and identify with something inside of them and it made them feel good, you know, like are you still too good for an act out? You know?
Yeah, I've heard you say that you want to make sure people feel your jokes.
Yeah.
How do you make sure there's an emotional connection with the audience?
I actually, I do it in the setup of the joke. Like that's, cause like one of the ways to get people to like instantly connect with a bit is to be vulgar. Like that's why a lot of the vulgarity in a joke isn't even in a punchline. It's in the setup of it, because vulgarity makes you it makes your senses snap too. And it makes you, it makes it just like, I don't know, there's something about it that makes you go, and then like when you're emotional about something, you connect with it. Well, I've like really studied that, and I try to never bring up a topic unless I can like make it emotional, you know, because why in the hell am I talking about it if it's not emotional? You know, like even like the silliest thing, like I have the bit about motion sensor sinks, and like it's like really about getting into I hate conflict, and I'm getting into a fight with an inanimate object and I'm losing. And like, so that's what the whole bit is about. It's not even about the punchlines within it. It's about the fact that I'm like, I hate conflict, I hate arguing, and now I'm losing an argument while I'm by myself with this thing, you know?
Interesting.
And I think that's what, like, even though people are identifying with the motion sensor sink and how frustrating those things are, which that's an emotion within itself, they're really identifying with like, God, I hate getting into fights and I hate losing a fight, especially like when I shouldn't even be in one, you know?
Oh, interesting.
And one of my best friends, Joe, we have this motto that we say, no drama during fun time. Like if we're out drinking or if we're out partying or whatever, if somebody in the group has drama, we're like, nope, like don't give me drama during my fun time, you know? And like when I thought of the motion sensor sinks thing, I actually was like a little hammered because, you know, I get hammered a lot. And I remember thinking like, fucking no drama during my fun time, you know? And so like that was the core of the emotion of the whole thing, which I really believe in that. Like, cause like in the diagram of a joke, there's the setup and the punchline, right? Let's make those like parallel lines, right? All right, I'm gonna do this. So setup, punchline. And then intersecting through here is, this is like your point of view, right? This is like your comedic point of view. And then this line, I call it, who the fuck cares? Like, right? Like we've all, and these intersect both the setup and the punchline. And so like we've all seen somebody like do the most brilliant joke on stage, but like maybe it goes through their point of view, but like who the fuck cares, you know? And so like that's why you need to make it emotional. You know, like you need to make it emotional, because as soon as you make the bit emotional, people start to care about it because it resonates with their own emotions, you know? And that's why like, and I'm a big fan of vulgarity. Like when I said that about, you know, like that being a trick to like get people into it, I'm a big fan of it, especially when it's done really well. But like I am a bigger fan of figuring out how to trigger people emotionally in like a really creative way.
That's interesting. So for your sink example, it's like if you just had the joke about the sinks being frustrating, that's like one level of connection. But when you personalize it to the context of you hating conflict, and this is like an example of that, now it creates a joke that's some jokes are like laughable, but they're not memorable. And I guess that extra layer is what actually makes it memorable. And they come up afterwards and are like, oh my gosh, I feel the same way.
Yeah, and to put it into an online context, I think if you really like if you went through the timeline of anybody's bits, if you got to see all the metrics and you could see the paper plane, that gets flown over to people, the share button, usually if something's really emotional, that's where somebody will send it. Like that's where somebody will share that, because like comedy videos have become a way of communication, right? Like we never know how to start a conversation with our friends, or like, let's say, that person that you really care about that, that's going through something, and you don't know how to just message them, hey, how you doing? Right. But like, let's say they just went through a breakup, and then all of a sudden, comedian Chad Daniels has a bit about breakups, and then you can just fly the paper plane over to him, send him the thing, and be like, thought of you, and then they can laugh about it and be like, and then it starts a conversation.
Yeah.
Like all any of us want to do are connect, and like now it's crazy because these stand-up clips actually like help us connect with each other. It's really neat.
Yeah. Do you find yourself writing in that way? Now you got me thinking, I should start writing jokes that people would want to send to each other.
Yeah. Well,
interesting.
I just write to like what I feel emotional about. I write to whatever's happening in my life. I'll be like, all right, I gotta write about that, or like whatever just happened to me. I'll try to like write like whatever the true story is, and then I'll try to figure out what the fun is within that. But yeah, I just try to write to what's interesting, and then I hope that other people find the same thing interesting. But yeah, that I can't say that I've actually thought to myself, like, what are people thinking about? What's trending? And can I write jokes about that?
Right.
And for some reason, I've never been able to do that. Like, I guess maybe it feels too, I don't know. It feels like I'm conspiring for views or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think about it after, like retroactively, I'll be like, oh, that's why this one did better than that one, because people care about that. It's emotional to them. But I never think that way. Like Jared Freed has a really great, I would call it like a series of bits that he's done. And he did a segment on it in his Netflix special recently. And it's based upon one question of what's your ick? Like how women will be like, oh, I didn't like he was super hot, but he was wearing sandals, and that's my ick. Or like he brought up his mom on the first date, that was my ick, or whatever. And Jared, I don't know how many, I think he's done like over a dozen videos about what's your ick. And I bet the shares on those are crazy.
For sure.
Because it's such an emotional topic. And like, but I don't feel like Jared saw that as a trending topic and then wrote something on it. I think that Jared heard about that, got really interested in it, so interested that he started asking people from stage, and then it became a thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, I guess the crowd work side is, I've caught myself sometimes like doing crowd work, like, all right, how can I force a viral moment here? And then it ends up just falling apart because I'm not in the moment and being authentic.
Yeah.
It has to be authentic, it seems, to really break that next level. Yeah.
Every time that I'm doing crowd work and I start to think to myself, like, this needs to become something, or like, I can tell this is going to be something. And I start to think about the process that's happening instead of just really flowing and being in the moment. That's where it stops.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like the crowd can see me tighten up. And like at the UCB, they literally sell sweatshirts that say "Don't think," and like I'll tell myself that on stage. I'll be like, "Don't think, Pete. Like just react, react." And then I have it so often when I'm watching things in post where, like, I'm like, I'm sitting there just feeling like a guy that's in my head, hoping that I can think of the next thing, and then I'm watching this other guy on stage that's me, and I totally know that's me. I don't have schizophrenia. But I'm watching that guy going, man, that guy's good. Mm-hmm. Like, that guy just thought of 4 things in a row that were really funny. And like, I couldn't think of that, but that guy can. But it's like, it really is a testament to what can happen if you just let yourself flow. And I saw this interview with Bob Dylan on TikTok. And he wasn't on TikTok, but it was like an old interview that was put on TikTok.
That is such a 2023 thing to
Yeah.
say. I saw a clip of Bob Dylan on TikTok.
Yeah, and Bob Dylan said that like he had like a lightning in a bottle, like few years of creativity, and then he said the lightning dried up. And I don't think that I've ever written anything that's as good as like, you know, the songs that Bob Dylan has written. So I'm not trying to like truly equate myself to him. But I remember there being a point in time where I had written like a good 45 minutes, and then I thought to myself, like, I can never write anymore. Like, so I thought that I had my lightning years and it dried up. And then I started to create in this more game-minded sense. And all of a sudden it was like there's just unlimited creativity because I'm just flowing and I'm not thinking, and I'm just letting it come out of me. And it was, I don't know, like I kind of wish that Bob Dylan wasn't so famous so that he could create as not a famous person and just let it rip. You know?
Is the game, is that what you referenced earlier? In like,
yeah,
is that what you mean by game?
Game, yeah. So game is a UCB term, and game is basically what stand-ups would call a premise, like the nut of it. What's the big idea? Like, what's the fun idea? And so, yeah, it's like the thing that makes the whole bit. And in stand-up, you do like setup, punchline, tag. In like an improv and sketch, you just go, what's the funny thing? And then how can I heighten it? Like how can I make it bigger and bigger until it hits that end beat? And so I try to think of things in terms of like this model, but sometimes this joke to me is just the start of the game, you know? And then I'm trying to heighten it and play it. And the emotion is the thing that keeps it's the fire that keeps the pistons moving in the engine of the whole thing.
Okay. So when you have a game, you then ask like, how do I feel about this?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always asking myself how I feel about it. And the more honest that you can be with yourself, the more creativity that will flow. One of the things, like if you're being dishonest with yourself okay, so let's say you have one funny punchline and you're like, God, this is the thing. And I gotta figure out more stuff that goes off of this. Sometimes this punchline isn't truly how you feel. And so that's why you can't write the rest of the punchlines. But, sometimes if you let yourself go, well, all right, let me just let this go and let me see what else is true here. And let me see what's more true than that. Sometimes you can get to something even funnier and then write the rest of it. That's kind of like, I mean, you've probably had it where you wrote a bit and like one of the taglines wound up being the big thing. Like you're like, I thought this was going to be the thing, but this was actually the thing.
Right.
And so then you hate to throw this away because you thought this was a diamond in the rough, but eventually you got to be like, well, fuck that. I got to go with this. And then this spawns a whole nother bit.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you just have to do that. And you got to ask yourself like, well, how do I really feel about this? You know, a lot of times what's funny is what you don't want to admit, you know, like the thing that you don't want to tell people. Cause like we go around our whole lives and we're like, just be cool. Like we almost don't want to be seen, right? Like please don't see me, you know, please don't see what's in here. But a lot of times if you let people see what's in there, the thing that you're trying to hide, that's the thing that people find funny because they're like, oh man, me too. You know?
Interesting.
Jeff Ross said to me one time, I go, how do you roast people? And he goes, you find the one thing, he goes, everybody, when they leave the house, they have one thing that they're hoping you don't see. And he goes, find that thing. He goes, and do not deviate. Don't find that one thing and then try to find other things. He goes, find that one thing. He goes, and pick that scab until it bleeds, until it's spraying blood, because that's the thing that you want to focus on.
Wow.
And like, I've always thought about that with writing, you know, like, I'm like, well, like, what's the thing that I don't want people to see when I leave the house? like the thing the other night that I didn't want people to see was like emotionally I wasn't doing very well. And it's because chemically I did this drug that now zapped my dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, and I just wasn't functioning at full strength. I was like maybe borderline about to have a panic attack. And then as soon as I just told the crowd that, and I told them why, I was able to get to that funny punchline of like why microdose cocaine, you know, and like, and then it wound up being a real funny thing. So like, yeah, a lot of times it like, if I could give advice to any comic, like try to find the thing that you're hiding and say it, you know, like point it out. It's the old Richard Pryor thing. Like they can't make fun of me. You know, like he said that in prison, he was really funny because he's like, well, they can't tear me apart if I make fun of myself. You know, like nobody's going to beat me up if I beat up myself verbally. So like find the thing that you don't want anybody to see and point it out, you know.
Boom. That's gold. Well, this has been amazing.
Oh
yeah, you're the man, Pete. I appreciate you,
dude. You're
carving out time to do this.
Oh my God.
Just two nice guys trying to out nice each other. You're cool. You're cool.
No, you are. You are. By the way, I started sweating. I don't know why. Like, look at my shirt. I always say that like this looks like I have like sports bra tits. Like, this is so funny. I don't know why. Like
that could be new merch.
Yeah, just make a black T-shirt with tit sweat under it.
Yeah.
People will be like, "Oh, do you have sweat?" Be like, "No, this is like this killer new shirt."
Yeah,
by Snugglestorm Productions.
Killer, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why. Maybe I'm still recovering from microdosing cocaine or something like that 2 weeks ago. But
well, I don't want to make you sweat more. But the final thing I always ask a comic on here their worst like bombing story or them getting booed or something.
Oh yeah,
build that sweat a little more there.
You know what's funny? I have so many friends that they'll wear layers because they don't want to like sweat to show. And I've just gotten to a point where I'm like, I'm just gonna sweat on camera. And like my videos, you know, so many times I'll post a video and I have like a big sweat stain, and I'm just like, well, the clip is too good. I gotta post it. Like I gotta post this shit. I don't care if I'm sweating, you know. Like, isn't that a funny secret that we try to keep? Like, I sweat. So does everybody. We have glands, you know. But anyway, the worst I've ever bombed. So I used to go out to Long Island. There was this comedy club that we'll just say it doesn't exist anymore for legal purposes. But this comedy club was run by the mob, like the mob, and like there were like weird guys that would come in to get packages, and like the head of the club was like this mob guy that was like, you know, he'd always have on these really great suits and rings and all this kind of stuff. And I would go out there and I'd bomb my fucking face off. Like the crowd would hate me. And like I would be doing, like I would just go up there with my inner joy, you know, that I have. Right. And all these Long Island people would be like, boo, fuck you, get off the stage. And I just would, I couldn't do well. And then they kept, every time I get off stage, the mob guy would be like, when can we get you back? And I'd be like, what? Like I was so broke. And they'd pay me like $600 for a weekend just to take the train out from New York City. And so I'd be like, okay, well, I guess like 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks. I just kept bombing my face off. And like, so this isn't a story of like the worst I've ever bombed. I have a couple of those, but like, this is more like how bombing continuously in this room helped me figure out my comedic point of view. That's the crux of this story. So I finally asked the mob guy, I was like, I never do well here. And I'm like, you have so many guys that go on, like, it'll be like Joey Rigatoni, you know, and like he'll go on stage and be like, you know how do you ever wake up and your ma's just on your ass, you know? And like, and the whole crowd would be like, yeah, I know what that's like, you know? And then I'd have to follow an MC that's just burning the room up, and it'd be 20 minutes of crickets. And I finally asked the guy, I was like, why do you guys bring me back here all the time? Why do you keep having me back? Do you believe in me? And they're like, no. They're like, we know how funny you are. We've seen you in the city, and it's really funny to us that you're so bad here. Oh, and they're like, every second that you're on stage, we're in the back of the room fucking dying because you're so horrible here. And so we'll keep paying you to come back. And I was like, and I remember I was riding the Long Island Railroad home that night, and I was like, I'm going to get good. I'm going to show these guys. And I remember thinking to myself, like, well, why don't I work out in Long Island? And it's because like, there's enough of like a jaded sense of the Long Island people that me walking out there like all happy, they were just like, I'm not buying it. So I was like, what's true and like what's emotional about this? Like when they see me, they're like, that's fake. You're fake, and I hate it. And so wow, I've had a sniffle and then I had a really weird dog burp. Anyway, so I came out the next time that I came out there, and I had like pre-written a bunch of jokes about how much they hate my joy, you know, and like how disgusting my happiness must be to them. And all of a sudden I started killing, and like I had that first 2 minutes of killing to where they then trusted me. And then it turned out that the rest of my jokes about just kind of being happy and being me followed suit with shitting on myself. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I think this is a thing. Like, I think this might be my thing. But that was kind of the thing that I felt like I was hiding from them. Like I was hiding when I went on stage, you know, like I was even hiding like, you hate me. Like, I was, we're having a good time, aren't we? No, you know, like they weren't having a good time. And so like, once I just addressed what that was and my relationship to it, that became kind of the start and the cornerstone to figuring out the sense of humor that I do all around the country now, of like, this is me. I'm a little much. Like, I just want to connect. I know nobody wants to connect, you know, like I know that that's annoying, and this is me, you know, but it turns out that a lot of people, they either go, yeah, you're annoying and I think that's funny, or they're like, you're like me, and finally like there's somebody up on a stage with lights on them that is semi-cool that is like me, and so I want to go hear about that because that's emotional.
Wow.
So that's what bombing in Long Island did to me, and I'm still friends with those guys that are in the mob. So and it's really funny because I'm a pretty sweet guy and I'm pretty earnest, and I've just come on your podcast and said that I did cocaine once and I'm friends with the mob.
Microdose though.
Yeah, I microdose. Dude, I can't handle any amounts of it. It's so sad. But
well, for anyone that wants to microdose cocaine with you, how can they contact you? What's the best way to connect with you?
Connect with me on social media. I'm at Peatley. Or if you want to go to one of my tour dates, go to peatley.net. I have all my tour dates there. My fall tour is already selling really well, and I can't wait.
Congratulations.
It's so much fun. Yeah.
It's great to someone who's been doing it for decades.
Yeah.
That it's like you just keep going, and then boom.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 26 years.
Wow.
It's coming up on 26 years. I've been doing it 25 years and it's coming up on 26. But like, yeah, I mean, at some point I almost kind of lost hope that whatever was going to happen, or I was going to get a following, or people were going to really start following me in masses, whatever even happened. And, you know, I've been touring for 23 years. And it's funny, my fiance and I, now that all this stuff is blowing up on the internet, like we can't go through the airport without somebody coming up and wanting to take a picture. And I'm like, there will be times where we're just trying to get where we're going, and my fiance will be like, come on, you know? But I'm like, no, you don't understand how special this is. I thought this would never happen. Mm-hmm. And now it's happening, and I love it every single time.
Awesome.
Like, I love it.
Well, I'm grateful to capture this moment in your career, and I'm excited to do more together. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And thanks for bringing out the tit sweat.
Of course. Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I did just have a double shot of espresso right before I came here. So maybe the espresso is boiling.
Espresso, right?
Yeah.
Microdosing espresso.
Yeah, I was microdosing espresso. I was macrodosing espresso. That's what I was doing.
All right. Well, thanks for being on Hot Breath, Peely.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Boom.
Boom.
All right.
Yeah.
Hot Breath.